God save Queen Victoria, the Queen Empress. We're now moving into the Victorian era, and there have been some changes. One of the most obvious changes is to what I'm wearing. There's always been distinct nautical fashions, but before 1857, how sailors would dress was at the whim of their captain. If a crew looked uniform, this was because of what he allowed his purser to buy for the slops chest, or simply because he ordered them to be dressed in a particular way. To create a uniform, what the Admiralty decided to do was to take what most of the men were already wearing and standardise it. This style had come from what the sailors of the Royal Yacht Victoria and Albert were wearing in 1846, because the yachties had decided to make a suit for the young Prince of Wales in the same style as their own. Queen Victoria liked it and had a painting produced of the Prince in his sailor's suit. Royalty has always been a leader in fashion, so this rig became seen as the thing to wear throughout the fleet and for children ashore. The Admiralty gave this style the rather uninspiring name of Class II uniform, but everyone else calls it square rig. It would be the standard naval uniform for all men dressed as seamen for over a century after the Prince first put his on, and continues to be the dress uniform for all ratings to this day. However, this lack of change in the uniform should not give you the impression that everything else was stagnating. The Victorian era was a period of immense technical change. The Navy's ships changed so much that if you took a vessel from the start of Queen Victoria's reign and one from the end, there would be nothing that looked the same except for the sailors manning them. At the start of this period, the largest ships of the line were made of wood and would have been recognisable to Henry VIII. By the time of Queen Victoria's death, these had been replaced by mighty steel battleships with turret-mounted guns that could hurl a shell halfway to the horizon. The personal weapons used by sailors, such as the cutlass that I'm wearing, also changed since the Georgian era. This isn't even just a cutlass, this is a cutlass bayonet. The Admiralty had wanted their sailors to use the standard triangular bayonet that the army used, but at some point this got lost in the bureaucracy and they ended up with this, the cutlass sword bayonet instead. The cutlass bayonet is longer than the triangular bayonet, and it's also heavier. If anything, it's too long and too heavy to be used as a bayonet. It makes everything too unwieldy. So when fighting ashore as part of a naval brigade, the sailors would try and acquire one of these soldiers' triangular bayonets as the War Department had originally intended. The Navy did a lot of fighting ashore during this period. There was nobody that could dare challenge them afloat, so they came to be used as a rapid reaction force that could land 1,000 men and guns anywhere in the world should the need arise. This led to sailors popping up in places where you might not expect. One of these places was in the middle of a deadly civil war between the Emperor of Order and Prosperity and Jesus Christ's younger brother. This was the Taiping Rebellion of 1850 and 1864. The European powers had initially tried not to get involved. When the Taiping started to threaten the European settlement at Shanghai, they became drawn in on the side of the ruling Qing dynasty. A naval brigade was landed at Ningpo, where a reward of over $30,000 in today's money had been offered for the head of the British consul. The Qing forces held back, and what happened is recorded in Long Arm of the Empire by Richard Brooks. When we jumped ashore, we found we were in for a hot time. For in less time than it takes to tell, Mr. Hogg the surgeon was shot through the arm, and Edward Cannon, a Marine, was shot with a bullet through his head. We formed up, and with a cheer, we rushed the walls. The first man up, Davis, was shot, fell back dead on us who were below. The next one down was Lieutenant Kenny, who was shot through the chest and then received a spear thrust as he was falling. Several men fell, but we stuck to it, and at last we were over the walls. Landing parties like these would have been armed with the two-band Enfield and cutlass bayonet, like this one. They would have been trained using the drills that you find in the 1859 edition of Instructions for the Exercise of Small Arms and Field Pieces for the use in Her Majesty's ships, which we'll be going through in the next series of videos.